The film begins in the church with two grooms, namely Bigoso. We notice that the bride will be old and her health will be very tired. But the man will remain a young man. Suddenly the priest takes off his clothes and we discover that he is an officer and he was disguised to arrest the groom, and at the same time a second officer enters the church, and we know that Claudia or her friends have a company specialized in the restoration of art paintings. And we also know that the museum would have done it if they had done it for restoration. But when they did not know when to pay. They said that the procedures would take time, but suddenly there is an unexpected need. Which is that Claudia Bigil telephones to find out that her grandmother is very tired. And the museum is quickly idling. And by taking her daughters and running around the house, and we know that grandma's condition is serious. So Claudia fears for her future and worries that the company is going bankrupt. And at the same time her grandmother will die. And she remains amazed at any source of income, but by trying. She is optimistic. She tells them that she is comfortable. She answers food. And she tells her grandmother that she answers her favorite meal. And as soon as Claudia is damaged and she feels Grandma will walk and die, Claudia breaks down over her death and her friends try to console her. And then with two small krills, Claudia forgets Ellie happened. And she goes back thinking about the money from Tenny. And her friends say that she can't take the money from her grandmother's pension, since she's a salvation, she died. Claudia is afraid, and she knows how to act on herself. And in the midst of a lot of thinking, Peggy, her friends have an idea. Which is that they keep her grandmother's body. And they say until Tanny that she's dead, and so Claudia will appreciate that she's taking the money she sold the pension and acted on herself and sold, and they knew that if they kept the body in the freezer, she wouldn't have any wind and she would have discovered their crime. So they quickly emptied the freezer and put Grandma's body in it, and the next day she would show Claudio and she would pretend that every natural need, but the employee tells her that he doesn't want the company to give her a need unless she gives him a bribe, and suddenly the statue moves to their side and they discover to me an intelligence officer by the name of Simon, and we know that he's an officer from the tax department. And he was spying on them, and then the employee Simon is a nice and friendly person because he tries to comfort Claudia by saying that she is not in need. She goes with them to the department and reassures her that she appreciates walking with me, but Claudia is not willing to leave the place unless the police filed a lawsuit against Claudia and tried to fix her mistake by visiting Simon in the hospital and apologizing to him by saying that it was a place where she meant to work hard and that he had been raped by her, and actually Simon believed her, and as soon as he was discharged from the hospital in his soul to meet his colo dia is an A. Strange need, and they need to make sure of it. But Simon is interested in his words. He prefers to look at Claudia and Pippin's picture. He likes her again on the day Simon goes to your house, Claudia D, to visit her. So Claudia is terrified when she finds out that Simon shows her grandmother's body. At that time he reports the crime, but after a long thought, it is decided that she opens up to him because there is no doubt in her, and he starts focusing more, and actually Claudia opens up to him and pretends that she is normal, and after Simon enters with a grill saying that he is Jay here to discuss this, she is nervous, but he doesn't ask her why. And then he grills her with a smile so that he informs his boss at work that he knows he is meeting the grandmother. And his boss says that from his way with Claudia he senses that she is suspicious of her. And therefore she shouldn't act as she is. And advises that he plans her to have dinner so that she stays normal with him more often, and actually Simon hears her advice and calls Claudia and says that Jay visits her again one day at home, and the next day he watches Claudia and her friends. And they show her grandmother's body from the refrigerator after they decided that they would give her a drink and sit her together with them. As soon as Simon arrives home and meets Grandpa, sitting at a table with Claudia's friends, they play cocina together. And Claudia remains terrified to better discover her truth, so she quickly takes him to the next role so that they sit talking away from them, and in the middle of talking, Simon offers her that they go out to have dinner. Whether or not they meet Claudia, she's hilarious and friendly because he asked to meet her far from home, but she can't discover her and doesn't show her grandmother again. And over time Claudia gets to know Simon more. But she notices that the person is very boring and friendly because he almost kindly continuing the relationship. He got angry with her, and on the day they cut off their outings, And then Simon connected her to her house, but they discovered the electricity piece by piece. So Simon entered the house with him so that Miss was sitting alone, and after if Ellie is in the freezer, they open it to check on eating and how long Ellie can sit her down intact, and Claudia shows the view of her feet and gets shocked and kindly thinks about moving him away from here for what he reveals to her. So she decides that she is letting go and says that she likes him for a while, and at the same time Simon forgets the freezer and perks with her come on, and the next day by telling her friends about Ellie happened and confessing to them that she already hates them. But by doing they try to convince her that she should try to get away from him in any way. And Claudia was really convinced by their words and took advantage of the opportunity if Simon decided to marry her overland for dinner, and on the day he pretended that she was injured and split in personality and tried, she's doing what she can to abandon him, and then Claudia tries to draw people's attention to me around them by she is choking with any infectious extent from their side, and people feel that she's crazy, so one of them does to choke with him. But Simon tackles the problem and beats Wyatt, and then one day Claudia thinks with his friends they decide that they take the body of her grandmother and bury. They wanted to bury her, but there was an unexpected need, and come on. Claudia's grandfather would meet them, and Claudia would be at first not knowing and friendly because her grocer had a lot of things to say. And he asks Claudia about her grandmother's whereabouts, and she says that he is a grocer. So one day he saw everything when he called her by saying that she doesn't exist. Claudia is very nervous and suspicious. She responds to him. And Grandpa says that she found her appearance within 5 hours. She reports her disappearance to the police, so Claudia devises a new plan. Which is that she is impersonating her grandmother. And because of the makeup that Claudia tattooed on her. Grandpa is convinced that Dee really is his ex-wife. Simon notices any need and says that he is Jay, apologizes to her. He is a grocery store. How many days have I not spoken to her? And Claudia really starts. She loves him, and their relationship with each other remains stronger to the point that Simon takes time off from his job in order to travel so they can break up, and Simon's friends are surprised at him and his father because the grocer for many years did not take any vacations. However, they remain hilarious that he found one he loves and knew compensates for the absence of his wife from him, and Simon is watching as he tells Claudia about his ex-wife and knows that he divorced her because she evaded paying taxes, and says that the most important need he has is the law. Claudia is afraid to better know her truth at the end of the vacation. Claudia finds out that she is pregnant as soon as Claudia returns home and thinks about the body that they have hidden. She worries about Tanny, and the time Dee repeats that she and her companion are removing a corpse. The grandmother then hid her at her friend's house because Claudia's relationship with Simon developed, and they stayed at her house a lot. And they prepared the body and wrapped it in a lot of paper. And then they put her in a wheelchair and they spoke Arabic to me with them. But on the way there was an unexpected need, which was that he is standing with the ambush police in Bitmano. He is sure that they are running, but the surprise is that Yamin says in front of all those standing that he is very law-abiding and that he's breaking it. So the police are going to search the Arab, and the girls are shocked when they see her empty, and they understand he is on the way, except for them a strong bump, and then the body fell from the Arab, and at the same time we see the grandfather banging on the door of the house to enter. He meets Claudia's grandmother once again. But there is a bird's eye, and suddenly he sees the grandmother coming from a distance in a wheelchair, skating on the asphalt. And he tries to stop her. But fails. And then the body arrives at the top of a high slope, and falls from above with the grandfather's soul behind her. And when he sees the grandmother in front of him, she is dead. He is shocked. He has a heart attack, and he dies, but before he dies, he calls the police and says that the grandmother died and her body is found at the cliff. And then Claudia's friends come back at the cliff and show the two bodies side by side. They get more scared and understand that they almost have to hide the two, and really they quickly drove them away from the place a little later when the police arrived at the place and did not meet any need there. So they considered that Ellie had run into them with a false report. No more. And then they saw Claudia after she returned home and were shocked when they met the body of her grandmother sleeping in bed, and when they saw Simon standing at her feet with understanding that Ellie had worked hard after revealing her secret for the first time. He decided that he was breaking the law and sympathizing with the daughter Ellie by loving her. And then he decided that he was protecting Claudia, and their child Claudia is very moved by his embrace, and they decide that they prefer to keep the body in the freezer and him because raising the baby Liche will require a lot of expenses, and then Simon's salary is not enough for them, and at the other by watching them while they are at Grandpa's funeral after they decided that they prefer to hide their grandmother's death, and hide her in their house. And our movie ends here. Don't forget to subscribe and like.